Hi, I'm Lauren, 34, and 6 months ago, my parents' little family empire in Chicago went up in flames because I finally stopped saving them. You'd think a 35th wedding anniversary dinner would be a night of champagne and nostalgia. Instead, my dad raised his glass, looked straight at me, and said in front of everyone, "We wish Vanessa were our only child." For a second, even the restaurant noise seemed to vanish. Forks stopped clinking. My mother smiled tightly, pretending nothing had happened. My sister Vanessa just smirked. And me? I didn't cry. I didn't even speak. I just felt something inside me snap, years of being the afterthought, the invisible daughter who paid the bills, cleaned up the mess, kept the family business alive while they worshipped the golden child. I remember standing up slowly, napkin still in my hand. The whole table staring. My heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. "Enjoy your night," I said, calm, steady, final. Then I walked out, heels clicking like gunshots on that hardwood floor. They didn't realize it then, but that was the last night they'd ever see me as their safety net. Growing up, I used to think love in our house came with fine print. Mom and Dad Richard and Margaret built their world around my sister, Vanessa. She was the prodigy, the perfect smile, the future of the family business. I was just there. When she brought home debate trophies, they threw parties. When I brought home a math medal, they forgot to show up because they were watching her recital. And it wasn't just childhood favoritism, it followed us into adulthood like a shadow I couldn't shake. At family dinners, they'd go on and on about Vanessa's brilliant marketing instincts for the store. If I tried to join the conversation, Mom would cut me off with a cheerful, "Let's hear from your sister." They didn't even hide it. It stung worse because their beloved business, a struggling little clothing shop, only survived because of me. Every month, I sent $600 from my own paycheck. I fixed their books, negotiated with vendors, and caught tax errors that could have destroyed them. And each time I tried to help, they'd smile and say, "Vanessa had such a clever idea." As if she'd saved the place single-handedly. No thanks. No acknowledgement. Just silence. But I stayed. Because family, right? Because deep down, I hoped one day they'd finally look at me and see their other daughter, not just the accountant who kept the lights on. That night at the restaurant killed that hope. As I walked out into the cold Chicago air, something inside me hardened. For the first time in my life, I wasn't going to fix it. I was going to let them live without me. And I had no idea how fast that decision would unravel their perfect little world. When I got home that night, I sat in the dark, still wearing my dress, staring at my phone. Dad's words replayed in my head like a cruel echo. "We wish Vanessa were our only child." I'd saved them for years emotionally, financially, professionally, and that was my thank you. I opened our family group chat. The same one they used to send photos of Vanessa's achievements. I typed one line. "I'm done helping with the store. No more money. No more advice. Best of luck." Then I hit send. Within minutes, my phone lit up like a fire alarm. Dad called first. Then again. Then again. Mom texted, "What's this about?" Vanessa just wrote, "Really? Call me now." I didn't answer. Not that night. Not ever again. By morning, the guilt campaign began. Voicemails layered with anger disguised as concern, Dad insisting we talk it out. Mom reminding me the business was a family legacy. Vanessa, predictably, went for the public humiliation route. 3 days later, I woke up to a Facebook post on her page. "Some people think they're indispensable, but they're just jealous and petty. Families shouldn't act like that." No names, but everyone knew. Comments poured in. Cousins tagging me. Old friends messaging, "Are you okay?" She even followed it up with a second post about my love life this time. Lies. Personal. Cruel. I could have fought back. I had receipts, every transfer, every email proving I was the one keeping them afloat. But I didn't. I decided silence would be my weapon. Let them stew. Let them feel the absence they'd wished for. Because for once, my absence was going to cost them everything. The plane to Florida felt like an act of defiance. 3 hours of altitude between me and their voices. I told myself I was going to Grandpa Walter for coffee and calm, but I wasn't bringing a cardigan to hide how raw I felt. I was bringing truth. Grandpa's house sits half buried in salt air and old newspapers, A porch that creaks like it remembers better secrets than anyone else in the family. He opened the door with that slow, surprised grin men get when they see something that's been wearing them down finally stand up straight. He'd always been the one who smelled like lemon oil and stubbornness. He never clapped the loudest for Vanessa or patted me condescendingly. He treated people like people. I spilled everything while a cheap fan stirred the humid air into a lazy cyclone. The toast, the long nights reconciling spreadsheets, the 600 a month transfers, the way my parents applauded Vanessa for ideas she hadn't earned. I showed him the posts I'd screenshotted before muting and blocking, the passive-aggressive lines, the smears on my work and my love life. I let the words out in one long, steady stream, and for once, someone listened without looking for the angle. He didn't murmur empty consolation. He folded his hands, and when he spoke it felt like a hammer nailing something closed. "That is betrayal," he said simply. Not disappointed. Not shocked, just precise. He'd seen how they treated me. He'd watched me hold the place together with the kind of invisible labor families pretend doesn't cost anything. Then Grandpa did something that felt almost too cinematic to be true. He stood up, walked to his study, and called his attorney. Not later. Not tomorrow. That afternoon. The man arrived in a suit that still fit his hospital visits, and they spoke in low, efficient tones while I sat in the kitchen trying not to breathe too loud. When Grandpa told me he was reworking the will, I felt a strange, dizzy relief. It wasn't the money I'd never needed that to prove my worth, it was the recognition, finally, that my life had weight without their approval. He wasn't giving me a gift so I'd bow, he was drawing a line. "You've earned it for who you are," he told me. The words were small, but they settled into parts of me I'd stopped trusting. We talked about the practicalities too. He wanted to know the unvarnished truth about the shop, how much I'd been sending, which suppliers were on their last nerves, the tax mess I'd quietly been putting out fires for. I told him. He frowned, not for the money, but because of the pattern, how they'd taken until the seams showed. He said, "Don't fix them this time." There was a moment when I felt awful for savoring his outrage on my behalf, like a traitor smiling while a villain trips. Grandpa didn't let me stew. He reminded me that justice and cruelty are different things. What he was doing was not to punish for spite, but to stop enabling the same old story where generosity becomes a doormat. I left Florida with a postcard in my pocket and a quieter sort of armor around my ribs. Grandpa's lawyer confirmed the will would reflect his wishes, land and properties into my name, a portion to charity he'd supported for years. He told me gently, "You don't have to be chainsawing them off yourself. Let the law do the cutting." Back in Chicago, I didn't gloat. I met Emily for coffee and told her the bare-bones version. She made a terrible pun that made me laugh too hard, and for the first time in a long time, the laugh didn't feel like an apology. I also felt the little, practical thrill of not having to pick up my phone every time a supplier threatened them. For the first time, their problems were theirs, not mine to absorb. It was a decision that felt selfish and righteous at once, and I slept like someone who'd finally closed a bank of open tabs in her head. The midpoint of my life had tilted. The story that had always been told about me, invisible, fix-it, eternally grateful, was starting to rewrite itself. 6 months later, their kingdom, that little Chicago shop they built their egos on, was rubble. The first domino fell quietly, a missed vendor payment. Then another. Then 2 shipments canceled. Without my monthly $600 and all those boring spreadsheets, their bills stacked like a Jenga tower made of overdue notices. Dad tried to charm the suppliers. Mom promised the IRS she'd get the paperwork fixed soon. But the numbers don't negotiate with pride. A cousin texted me one afternoon. "Did you hear? The store's closed." That's how I found out. Not from them. Not from Vanessa. From family gossip. Turns out the audit I'd been warning them about for years finally landed. $30,000 in penalties. They couldn't pay. The bank foreclosed. The windows boarded up. The same shop where they used to hang Vanessa's vision banners now sat dark and empty. And Vanessa? She went down swinging, or rather, posting. Her investors pulled out once they realized the business she'd bragged about, reviving, didn't exist anymore. Then the family receipts started leaking. My cousin, bless his messy heart, shared screenshots of my monthly transfers. The same ones Vanessa had mocked me for. Suddenly, the narrative flipped. "You lied about her," one aunt commented on Vanessa's page. Lauren was the one keeping that store alive. Family group chats that once ignored me were now war zones. People unfollowed her. Friends backed away. Her reputation, the one built on my work, crumbled faster than the store itself. Mom and Dad didn't fare better. They'd taken a second mortgage to prop up their legacy. Without income, they lost the house too. Moved into a small apartment, selling jewelry and old furniture just to keep up. When I heard, I didn't gloat. I didn't rush to comfort either. I just breathed. Because for once, I wasn't the one paying the price for their mistakes. And the silence from them? That was the sweetest balance sheet I'd ever seen. Their silence lasted half a year before I understood it wasn't distance, it was defeat. Word trickled into the same family vines that once strangled me. Vanessa was bouncing between low-level retail jobs, her old, regional manager swagger gone. Mom sold handmade jewelry online under a fake name, hoping no one would notice. Dad was picking up warehouse shifts at night. The people who once looked down on me at dinners now avoided them. The uncles who'd toasted Dad's leadership called him reckless. The aunts who adored Vanessa stopped liking her posts. The empire they'd built on denial and favoritism had finally collapsed under its own vanity. And me? I was finally living. The startup I'd been consulting for offered me a senior manager role, full benefits, corner office, the kind of validation I used to chase from my parents. My boss smiled and said, "You're going places." And for once, I believed it. Outside of work, I'd built a small circle that felt more like family than anything I'd ever known. Emily, my brutally honest best friend, who could make me laugh through tears. And Ethan, the quiet engineer who saw through my armor without trying to fix it. One night, we were sitting on my balcony, city lights flickering beneath us. I told him everything: the dinner, the posts, the collapse. He listened, hand steady on mine, and said, "They'll never understand how strong you had to be just to walk away." It wasn't pity. It was belief. Weeks later, a postcard arrived from Grandpa Walter, a little handwritten note in his shaky script. "Proud of you. Stay free." I pinned it above my desk. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder that love, real love, doesn't come from those who demand proof. It comes from the ones who see you even when you're silent. In the end, I didn't destroy my family. They destroyed themselves trying to erase me. I just stopped holding up the walls.